Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hi, this is Brian Burke.
This is Kelly Rudy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
I am Jason Greger.
Hi, this is Scott Hartnell.
This is Quick Dick McDick.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Let's get on to today's sponsors. Jen Gilbert and team want you to know for over 40 years, since 1976, the dedicated realtors of Coldwell Bankers Cityside Realty have served Lloydminster and the surrounding area. They are passionate about our community, and they pride themselves on giving back through volunteer opportunities and partnerships as often as they can. We know that home is truly where awesomeness happens. Coldwell Bankers Cityside Realty for everything real estate, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Give them a call, 780-875-3343. HSI Group, they're the local oil field burners and combustion experts that can help make sure you have a compliant system working for you. The team also offers security, surveillance, automation products for residential, commercial, livestock, and agricultural applications. They use technology to give you peace of mind so you can focus on the things that truly matter. Stop in at 3902 52nd Street or give Brody or Kim a call at 306-825-6310. Today, Lauren and Art and Soul. I've talked an awful lot about the lady who takes a hold of your heirlooms and makes them look absolutely amazing. I promise she will not disappoint. Stop in and share your ID. You got something you want to get framed and make it look right. She can make it, like I say, I got the old jersey hanging above my left shoulder currently, and it looks amazing. She was telling me a little while ago that she'd had a sheath of wheat brought in from a farmer who had finished his final year of farming and wanted to capture a piece of that final field. I mean, it can be as simple as a sheath of wheat. It could also be a jersey, a photo, a piece of artwork, you name it. The stories go on, and honestly, she remembers all of them, which is crazy. She's got just a talent for it. Now, she's open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., You can give her a call at 780-808-6313 or stop in at 5016 39th Street. It's more than just a frame. It's a story. I got to give a shout out to Read and Write and Miss Deanna Wandler for the amazing work they helped do on the SNP billboard. I got to give a special thanks to Lloydminster Archives who help put these together each week. They help line them up so that I can sit down and talk with these different guests, especially Lynn Smith, who works tirelessly behind the scenes. She helps line up, all the different people I get to sit down, and I get the fun part, I get to sit and hear the stories and record it, and it's just a ton of fun. So I appreciate the Lloyd Archives entrusting me with talking to the community pillars of Lloydminster. Now let's get on to your T-Bar 1 Tale of the Tape. Born and raised near Lloydminster, he worked for Husky back in the 1960s. He's known around the community for owning with his brother Furniture Clinic, which they operated for 45 years. His love of fireworks has made him quite popular, and overall, Larry is just a character. This is his story, so buckle up. Here we go. It is August 16th, 2020, and I'm sitting across from Larry Olynyk. Did I say that right?
Close. You got the accent on the wrong syllable. It's Olynyk.
Olynyk. Larry Olynyk. There you go.
There we go.
Well, first off, thanks for joining me. I look forward to sitting across from you and getting to know you a little better.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Well, you were wondering how we go about this. We like to start from the beginning because, that's where it started. Your parents moved here from Edmonton?
No, my parents moved here from a little Ukrainian community north of Two Hills, Alberta, by the name of Ispis. We moved here in 1955 to a farm that my dad had purchased along with my uncle just south of Lloydminster, about 10 miles. And they commenced the farming there. We built a house at that time, and that is where I grew up for the most part of my life. I was 5 years old when we moved here in 55. So I guess not too tough to figure out that I was born in 1950. So it was quite an adventure moving here, picking up the whole family and some of the livestock. And along with granaries and a very limited amount of machinery we had, and just pull up stakes and head to a new location and start out anew with just a bunkhouse and a granary to live in, basically. So that's kind of where we started in '55. I started school. That was the spring of we got here to put the crop in. The crop was put in, was taken off with a binder and stooks for the first 2 years and a thrashing machine because we didn't have the equipment, and that was like quite a ways back. I remember driving the tractor at 5 years old. I couldn't do too much but steer it down the road or down the field as my uncles and my aunts would be pitching sheaves onto the wagon, onto the rack. So that's kind of where we started. I started my school in Lloydminster. In fact, there was still a rural school by the name of Southminster. No, let's try again. Golden Valley School. My parents, whether they heard word of it or had the wisdom to get me started in Lloyd, because within 1 or 2 years, the country school shut down and everybody moved anyhow. So we started school here. Age 6, I guess I was almost 7 as my birthday turned out, or a good 6.5. Didn't know 2 words of English when I started school. Like I said, we came from a Ukrainian community.
You didn't understand? You didn't know 2 words of English?
Nada. Nothing. I went to school with total Ukrainian head full of knowledge. So I can also remember it on one of my first days, and it might have been either my first or second day at school, where monkey bars. I had never seen anything like that in my life off the farm in Eastbus, Alberta. There was always long lineups at recess. I discovered you didn't get across there many times. So I stuck up my hand and asked the teacher if I could go out and play on the monkey bars, in Ukrainian, of course. My teacher, being English speaking, I'm sure thought I needed to go to the bathroom and gave me the nod. So I did. I went outside and I was having just one grand time on the monkey bars with myself. No lineups, man. I was just going. Till about 15, 20 minutes later, teacher discovered what was going on, spotted me out there, and was kind of, hey, let's go back to the schoolroom here, little boy. We don't care if you can't understand English or not. This isn't what we do during the day. So that was kind of the beginning of my school, and I guess I've kind of learned most of the language by now. So that was beginnings. Did my 1 to 12 here in Lloyd. Finished high school. Played a lot of sports during my growing up. Much perhaps to my parents' chagrin, they weren't real crazy about driving into town to pick me up and deliver me to different sports. Cost the gas and machinery and etc. and work to do. So. But I did play a lot of sports, played football in high school. Had a chance to go to Camrose College, but by then I'd landed a job at Husky Oil, and I was in the oil patch making big money.
What year would that have been?
That would have been in '68. I went into the oil patch. I graduated a couple times, actually. I graduated once in '67, and then I liked it so much I did it again in '68. I repeated part of my 12 to get some marks up. That's really what happened. So,
what was Husky Oil like? What was the oil patch like back in '68?
I loved it. It certainly wasn't as hectic as it was now. I talked to some of my old foremen and some of the guys I see around that are still around, and I said, that was the best job I ever had, and especially as a kid, 19 years old or whatever. Had a new pickup that Husky was paying me for using, so they were basically making payments on my new pickup. And the money was good. I mean, I was getting paid the same as men that were raising families of 4 or 5, so I had lots of chaff in my pocket that I managed to waste pretty much every penny of it.
How are you wasting your pennies back then?
Well, the Villa Motor Inn nightclub got a good piece of it. I built a hot rod as well, and that what the Villa didn't get, I think JB's Automotive in Edmonton did get in parts and pieces. because everybody had an opinion on what I should put into this hot rod, and I just kept signing the checks and putting it in there. So
Did you finish it?
Oh yeah, it's just finished. It's been I drove it I used it on the street, year round for a few years. I shouldn't say year round. That's a bit of a lie. I parked it in the wintertime, but I did use it as an everyday driver. It's sitting in my garage at home as we speak. Hasn't been on the street for probably about 25 years, and now that I'm unemployed on a full-time basis. I plan on digging it out of the archives and getting it back on the street, and I'm hoping that's next year, meaning 2021. So that's kind of a plan. So that's, like I said, worked at Husky for 2.5 years, went traveling, became an aspiring hippie during the 70s, did a bit of traveling through New Zealand, Australia, up through Malaysia, Singapore, England, and then back to home.
Back then, was it an unusual thing to do, or was there tons of people out traveling about?
There wasn't that many. I mean, there wasn't as many backpackers perhaps as there is this day and age. But I did have a buddy that had moved or had gone to New Zealand and was down there at the time. So I guess that was kind of a bit of a destination, somewhere to go, and then also that I knew somebody at the other end. So 3 of us took off here from town and went exploring.
When you look back at your exploration, your travels, everybody always has a good story or two. What's a fond memory or a story you share from back on that trip or those travels?
Well, I guess I probably shouldn't be telling you about the 1/2 pound of pot I smuggled into New Zealand in my cowboy boots, eh?
No, I think you certainly should.
That's a bit of a crap your pants moment now, but 19, 20 years old, who cares? No worries, no cares.
So you stuck a 1/2 pound of pot in you just threw it in the cowboy boots and figured it out.
Well, just a 1/4 pound in each boot. Just in a couple bags. They fit nicely in the legs. It worked well. Kept us entertained in New Zealand for a few months after we got there, and my buddy was certainly glad to see us, I can tell you that. So we lived there for a few months actually. I can't remember many. I'd have to count back now. I ended up getting a job in the biggest Datsun garage in all of New Zealand. I was the #1 grease monkey, if that's something to brag about. But when I took over there, the service bay, they did a lot of new pre-delivery inspections and lubes and things like that. So it wasn't even really a dirty job, but probably 95% of my cars I was working on were brand new and non-dirty, non-greasy. So it was very nice. And other than that, there was a few early service jobs, meaning the first few thousand miles. So I did that. I know the bay was quite a mess when I got there, and it didn't take me long to get that all spick and span clean, because I was running out of work generally 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and trying to find something to keep myself occupied so they didn't find something else to occupy me. So I did that, and of course then when I was leaving, the boss was trying everything in his power to keep me there, because I think maybe told him a little bit of BS to start out with, that I'd kind of moved there knowing full well that we were probably only staying 3 or 4 months and then moving on to Australia. So I guess if we ended up with a little bit of a Pinocchio nose out of that one, I guess I did. Anyhow, he tried everything in his power to keep me there. When we were leaving, I was supposedly the best lube guy they'd had there in a long, long time. Anyhow, we did take off. One of our traveling mates from town here, Wayne King, went ahead of the other 2 of us, and he went over to the west coast of Australia and got a job on the offshore drilling rig over there. So being from Alberta and being in the middle oil patch, and heck, I worked for Husky Oil on the water floods and satellite system, saw a drilling rig. Anyhow, we went there. We were going to apply for big money in the drilling rigs in the sea because we were from Alberta. Well, we didn't get hired. We did manage to make a living finding apples and things in the evenings in orchards and things. Things got pretty hungry there for a while. And finally...
Things got pretty hungry there for a while?
Really hungry, yeah.
You were broke.
Oh, we were not only broke. I think when we went to Australia, I had, I think, $40, and my traveling buddy, Ron Gunn, had $20, and that was it, and a plane fare. As a matter of fact, Ron didn't even have the plane fare. I did. He bought, the other fellow that we went to visit, he bought his plane fare and used his passport to vacate New Zealand and go to Australia. So we're lucky he didn't end up in jail there as well. Anyhow, they're probably still looking for him somewhere in New Zealand here, 40, 50 years later. So then when he got to Australia, in fact, he just took and put the passport and everything back in an envelope and mailed it back. Mailed it back to Randy so he could go home eventually. So that was a little bit of an adventure.
With the money thing, with only having a handful of money left, was that you just spent it way too fast? You went there going, we'll figure it out?
We went with a one-way ticket and I think $500 in our pocket. So, a few months later after, after a month or so, went to work at that Datsun garage in New Zealand. I still remember, like yesterday, I was making $1.22.50 an hour, right down to the half a penny. Got paid on Friday afternoon and to come in a little brown envelope, cash. There's all your, and I can't remember what it amounted to, like $46 or something, Well, $1.22.50 an hour times 40 hours, or whatever that gives you. So that's what the rate of pay was. So we did that, and we just didn't. We were on an adventure. We were going to go work. We were on a world cruise. We were, going to go for forever, or maybe a few months or years or whatever. We did make about, I guess, might have been 8-10 months, I guess, before I finally got home. But did get to the time where when we were in Australia on the west coast there in Perth, that I did end up wiring back to I was smart enough before I left to leave enough money in my bank that no matter where I was on God's green earth here, I would have enough money to get home without having to make that dreaded phone call to my folks needing money. I wasn't going to do that. So I did have enough money stashed aside, so when we were in Perth, I did get some money wired down to me, enough to buy flights home, basically. So.
You went to New Zealand, Australia. Where else did you go?
Malaysia was our next port of call, and then Singapore, and then up to England. At England, I deported my traveling buddy Ron because of our lack of funds. By the time we got there, we had basically no money and a ticket as far as England. Well, they didn't need any long-haired bums in England any more than they already had. They had enough of their own, I think, was more or less what the guy told us at customs. So they did end up, there was a charter flight of old veterans heading from England back to Toronto. Had one seat left on it. And lo and behold, with my luck, they chose my buddy to go instead. So now we cleaned out his pockets. I think he had about $10 or $15. He gave me all of his money. The old guy counted it. I had $68, I believe it was. He says, you should have enough. You made it around the world. He says, you should have enough money there to get you home. The deal was there was charters that were coming home for, you can get them at that time at about $50, $60. But they were kind of an illegal thing because you had to be a member of this group for 2 years before you could qualify for these flights. Well, the guys that were running these things were ignoring the 2-year thing. So the guy knew I could get home. He just kind of knew it wasn't real kosher, perhaps, but figured I probably could get home. So he gave me the money. They took Ron, put him long hair down to here with a headband and all this business. And we must have stunk a terrible fright. We'd been awake for, I think, about 48 hours straight drinking whiskey with some rich veterinarian from from Australia that was flying to England and needed company. Well, we didn't have money, but we were company. So we spent pretty well 2 days partying with him on the way home. So we were quite a sight and hadn't seen water in I don't know how long. So I imagine between what we looked like and what we smelt like, I can imagine him walking in a full plane of veterans, led him right to the back seat, right down this row in handcuffs, and handcuffed him to the seat once he was in there. And all these guys are wondering what they got their hands with at the back. Anyhow, I did give him name to my aunt and uncle in Toronto. I said, you know, when you give me all your money, here's a name and my phone number and everything. My aunt and uncle, tell them what happened here. They will see you good for, you know, $50 or $100 or whatever it is. They'll see you home. So that's what, in fact, he did. And so then the guy stamped my passport in England for 21 days. And I jumped on a train, and I'd taken history lessons in school before. I heard about Piccadilly Circus. Conductor says, where are you going? I'm going to Piccadilly Circus. I had no clue what the heck Piccadilly Circus was, except I heard it in history class. So finally on this tram or bus I'm on, conductor, he says, okay, this is your stop. It's Piccadilly Circus. Well, I expected to at least see a merry-go-round or something that looked a little bit circus. Well, there was nothing. Near as I could gather, the only thing that was circus is the street was kind of round there, and the buildings were, in fact, built in a circle. There was your circus. So I got off, not knowing anybody, not knowing nothing, and now what? Okay, so it did run into a couple of Scottish fellas, which took me about 4 days to even figure out 3 words that those guys were saying. Man, those guys can roll their R's. So I kind of hung around with them. I think 2 of them had a bit of a day job, and then we would meet up at night. They knew their way. They'd been there for a spell, I think maybe a couple of years. There was quite a few abandoned buildings that time, and like I say, these boys knew the ropes, so we did find an apartment suite that was kind of shut down, and found a room that we kind of called our own, that we could kind of half board up and keep safe during the night, where it wasn't a complete shamble and hadn't been used as a bathroom as so many of the rooms had. So that's where that was my accommodations for my stay in England. And then grabbed that flight that the guy was telling me about that was illegal, grabbed one of those on the way home. Matter of fact, I went to work a little bit for the guy that was organizing that. I was running his tickets back and forth to different locations there for a few days. So he cut me an extra $5 or $10 off the price of my ticket in the end result. And last night I was there, all of a sudden, bang, 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 bang on the doors, and I hear this, okay, get them all up. I go, oh, now what's going on? Well, sure enough, next thing, a couple of bobbies, police, come bouncing, kicked our door open, kind of come bouncing in. He says, okay, get them all up. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. Here's my last night in England. I'm going to end up in jail overnight. I'm going to miss my plane tomorrow, and I'm here. It was pretty much down. So I got up, rolled up my sleeping bag and my pack and everything, sitting there waiting to go. And they never did come back. So I thought after, I think what they must have meant when he said get them all up was get them all up, and they were looking for somebody, I would think. So anyhow, it was even though I didn't get locked up, I certainly didn't get any sleep for the rest of that night, I can tell you. And then we hit the train there, the train back to the airport next day. A delay there. The plane was delayed for 2 hours. I thought, I'm never getting home. I know I'm never going to get home again ever in my life. the way this whole sequence is going. But eventually they did get our problems fixed, jumped on the plane, and off to Toronto we went.
What did you think when you first got home after that sweet sequence of events? Like, were you like, did you go do something in particular? Were you just happy?
Oh, I was, how would you say, elated beyond comprehension just to be on Canadian soil again. Because like I said, for a while there, I didn't think that was ever going to happen to me with delays and police and this and that. And I thought, wow, lack of money. And as a matter of fact, when our first thing when we landed in England, they were deporting us back to Singapore. So talk, you'll do it. Like, no, we're in Canada. That's closer. We're Commonwealth, you guys. Come on. They didn't care if we were Commonwealth or what we were. We were just a pair of long hairs, and they had enough bums in their streets as it was, and they didn't need two more, basically. So as Singapore, I mean, you think we're in bad shape now? We don't have any money. Wait till we show up next time. I said, you ever see how many guys are trying to find jobs down there, Chinese fellas? And I said, I bet you they're working for a nickel an hour, and some of them for less. So you send it wide. Well, because we're sending you back to your last port of call. We won't advance you to where you're going. Really. So after that little scare, I tell you, how would you say, the deporting back to Canada and me staying in England was a heaven sent compared to what we were looking at. Because I thought, okay, we end up back in Singapore now. Now what, really? We don't have a room. Where do we eat, sleep? How do we get a ticket back out of there? Yeah, anyhow, that was anxiety. So it was very nice when I got to Toronto. I was dead tired because, like I said, I hadn't slept for quite a while. My aunt and uncle, I'm sure, I don't know why they didn't just look through the little peephole and not bother answering the door. I think I might have. I seen what was standing on the other side. Had a beard down to about here and hair to about to match, and same thing as I was saying, hadn't had a bath in actually my situation. Ron would have had one. I probably hadn't had a bath in probably 2 to 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks before I got to England. So I imagine I was fairly ripe by then as well. And like I said, so basically they just more or less got in, went and had a bath. I can kind of remember that feeling. I bet you I scrubbed myself, almost rubbed myself raw for 3/4 of an hour with a washcloth and soap, just trying to get clean, or feeling like I was getting the smell off of me, basically. And then it was pretty much straight to bed, and kind of talked to my aunt and uncle next day. So I was very tired, but just relieved to be back on Canadian soil.
When you left on the trip and you had your grand scheme of how this was going to go, were you planning on, I don't know, like working abroad and earning some money and kind of like seeing a bunch of countries, or was there a different mindset on what you guys were trying to accomplish?
I don't even know if we had a mind, truthfully. No, actually, I mean, we were going traveling. We were going to go down and see Randy that was down there. Figured that was a bit of a start. And then we planned on really doing a bit of traveling, work for a month or two, and then carry on. And, that's, like say, we bummed around New Zealand for a couple of months, and we did get jobs. We both got jobs. I in the Datsun garage, and Randy in a warehouse, clothing warehouse. So
when did it get to the point though where you're like, you mentioned anxiety? When did it get to the point where like, was it just you're on your way and you're like, if we can get to England, we'll be home and it won't be a big deal, and then England happens and now you're like, oh man, what happens now? Is that the part where it starts to fall apart then?
That's where she really started to kick in. And where it really started to kick in even more, I guess, is when I seen, well, no, not his plane didn't depart, but I seen him, my buddy, traveling buddy. They took him down the corridor, and I knew that was the end of him. And I'm seeing planes leave, and then the old fella at customs, he was my salvation. He was a nice grandpa type fella that could kind of understand. To start out with, we had a couple of young hot dogs, and I make no bones about saying I don't know how old these guys were. They weren't a hell of a lot older than I was at the time. They might have been 25 or under 30 for sure. And they were these English type dudes that would walk along with their little top hat trying to play the role, and with their umbrella that they would tap down on every second step. That's the kind of guys we were dealing with. those guys would have nothing to do with us. They'd do nothing for us. Finally, when the head supervisor, the old grandpa guy, came out, we could see that maybe we were going to survive this, because it was looking pretty grim to start out with those 2 hot dogs.
Was that the first time then you'd traveled alone, is when your buddy goes off on the plane and now you're by yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes. Abroad, obviously, yes. I mean, in Canada, I had been on different 4-H trips and things like that where I'd traveled by myself to camps and things like that on the bus. But
I was just getting at, I've been in a different countries far away from home before by yourself, and it is a very lonely feeling, is all I was curious about, if it had been the first time you'd been by yourself.
It certainly is a lonely feeling, and especially then you didn't have all this media communication we've got today, Facebook's chat time, stuff I don't know or understand. So it didn't even really have the luxury of trying to make a phone call home. It was difficult to do. So yes, like I said, when Ron finally left, then there was devastation, and then, you know, like I said, I got on the train, took me into downtown London onto the old tram, and I seen that veterinarian and his wife walking down the street not too far from when I was getting off at Piccadilly. If I could have jumped through that bus window to get near them, I would have, but we were probably doing 20 miles an hour at the time, and I couldn't jump off because there was the one face of familiarity, somebody that I knew in England, like there they were, and then just vanished just like that too. That might have been the low, you know. Any last hope had just vanished. You know.
What did that? Well, you mentioned communication. So were you writing letters to your parents at all to let them know where you were, anything like that?
Oh yeah, we'd do the letters, but even airmail. Oh, goodness, I can't remember. It took, I think, a better part of a week or 2 weeks? It probably was 2 weeks time. You did a turnaround time. The letter got home and somebody jotted some words and sent it back. So things that were happening very slowly, or in our minds leastwise, they were happening slowly. It just took that long to communicate. I think we did make one phone call, and it was, oh geez, at the time, remembering that I'm making $1.22.50 an hour. I think that one time we made a phone call and it was $17.
Ooh.
So, you know.
A couple days work.
Exactly. And that was a 3-minute phone call. So obviously you weren't doing those too often.
You know, when you look at it now over your lifetime and to see how the world has become really, really small. If you were to do the same trip today and be over in New Zealand, you could FaceTime your entire family whenever you wanted, and it would almost feel like you weren't gone.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's how small we have made the world with this communication and with travel. You take a look at, you know, these planes are getting from one destination to the other. And there's not too many places we can't be on anywhere on this earth within about 12 hours, 12, 18 hours. You're there, and in some of the most remotest places possible. No, it's we've really shrunk this planet of ours, as far as that goes.
What did your parents think of you heading out to seek the brave new world?
Well, considering I was, 19, 20, 21 years old, they might have been pretty damn glad. I don't know. I might have been a bit of a challenge, I suppose, at times, I guess, as a lot of teenagers are. So maybe they were just damn happy. No, they were. Dad had been across the pond during the war. Mom had never been across the States border twice just to say that they'd been in the States, and they're visiting an aunt in Bromhead, Saskatchewan. That's only 5 miles off the States. But Dad had done some traveling and he'd been over there. So he could maybe kind of rationalize or understand that a little bit more. But just, the old, be careful, and God put a head on your shoulders for a reason, and it wasn't to keep you from floating away, so use it.
You mentioned your father was over in the war. Did he fight in World War II then?
Yeah, he was over in England, and then he was kind of there towards more the Belgium and the cleanup and the end part of Holland and Belgium and the cleanup and the getting rid of the Nazis at that point in time out of there. So he wasn't over in France or any on that continent. That was kind of his deal.
Did you ever ask him about it?
He didn't talk. Some, but it's not a thing that he talked a great deal about. He had a couple photo albums that, had a lot of pictures of, him and his buddy, and seemed like a lot of gals all the time at these different dances and socials. So I'm starting to wonder how much he really did know her. I'm starting to think he was maybe the social convener. I don't know. No, he talked about it some, but he definitely wasn't a warmonger, and it was nothing worth bragging about. Nothing. I guess in his mind there was nothing worth remembering about the whole thing, So he certainly, you know how some guys would tell you war stories for hours, and maybe half of it might have been BS. Who knows? But he never did talk too much about it. If you asked him specific questions, you'd probably get a specific answer, and that would probably be about it. So, yeah.
When you come back from your traveling, do you think about going to the farm? You grew up on a farm. Did you at any point think maybe we should grab some land and start? Or
yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that farm life, but again, I guess when I got finished high school, I never really thought about farming as such, because the only part that I understood from farming is you worked like hell and you got no money out of it. The only time I kind of it seems a little bit funny, but I'd mentioned earlier that my uncle came down and started farming with my dad here, and then 4 or 5, maybe it was 5 years later, my dad bought out my uncle's 2 quarters and acquired a bit more land and carried on. But the only time I really got paid for anything, as far as a kid is concerned, he doesn't see that he got 2 bits here to go to the show and a pair of skates or whatever, used as they were at Christmas. But at least when I went picking rocks for my uncle, I'd always end up with $1 or $2 at the end of the day. So I didn't mind picking rocks for my Uncle Steve as much as I minded perhaps picking rocks for my old dad. Though my old dad was feeding, clothing, and housing me. But yes, that's I never really, I guess, considered the farming. And then, of course, like I said, I got right after high school, I worked in construction there. In fact, helped build the Dr. Cook nursing home. Shortly after that is when I got that job at Husky, and I probably got spoiled a little bit with the money. I was making pretty good money for a 19, 20-year-old kid, New pickup, life was good. Hey, gas, remember burning purple gas, though I shouldn't have been, but I did have another tank hooked up in the truck with a secret little valve. Purple gas was 2 bits a gallon, and my dad couldn't understand how I could put more gas through my pickup than he could put through running that entire farm, but somehow that old truck didn't stay still too long, and I think I did have over 100,000 miles on that thing in just over a year. So it...
in just over a year?
Just, between working... No, pardon me, that's a bit of a misdemeanor. 2 years, because I was trading off in 2 years' time, yeah. But that was between work, which I was getting paid, I think, 15 cents a mile or something for my work time, and then my personal. But like I said, that truck didn't stay still too long.
What do you remember about the early years of Lloydminster? Not the early years of Lloydminster, I guess, but your younger years of Lloydminster would have been a smaller town at that point. Do you remember some things that stick out?
I remember very well. I was a 5-year-old kid when we moved here from, like I said, Eastbus, Alberta, which was just a little community north of Two Hills, about probably 20 miles. When we moved here, and sure, there was a little town there, but it consisted of maybe 10 stores, a hotel, which every town had a hotel. So when we moved here, I can remember. Kind of lost myself here for a minute, Sean. Sorry.
No, that's all right. When you moved here as a young kid, just talking about Lloyd.
Yes. Okay. All the buildings, big buildings and lots. Well, I thought they were big. To a 5-year-old little Ukrainian kid who knows speak of the English, everything seemed marvelous here. I can tell you, see these dents on the sides of my head? They're still there, 65 years later, and that's from running in to all the parking meters here in Lloydminster. There wasn't such a thing as a parking meter in Two Hills whenever we went into town. So as a kid, fascinated and big eyes, windows and walking along, I rattled my head on more parking meters than I can care to imagine. And they were just the right height, and I'd be walking along, looking in the stores, and wham! Next one, look in the store, wham! And it took me forever to get used to those stupid parking meters. So that, and I remember a little tot daycare playground, I guess it was, right beside the old fire hall downtown, 49th Street in Lloyd. And was the first black person I'd ever seen in my life, Mrs. Lawson. Remember like yesterday. Mom would leave me over there, 5-year-old kid. She would walk across the street and buy groceries for the week or 2 weeks that she'd planned on buying groceries and leave me over to play at the tot lot. Well, I was so fascinated with Mrs. Lawson. I would sit there on this little bench. I can still see it like yesterday, or little curb they had there around the paddling pool. And I think I would just sit there and stare at her for 2 hours. I couldn't believe how dark she was, and then I couldn't believe how pink her hands and her tongue and everything were. I was amazed. And I hope this isn't a bad story in this day and age.
Actually, I just wonder, what you think about what's going on with today's day and age. I don't think it's a bad story whatsoever.
Well, that's the way it was. Like I said, first black person, because we didn't have TV. We didn't have anything. I mean, and if they were black talking on radio, I would have not known that. I'd never seen a black person till that day. And then I can't tell you how many Saturdays I'd have spent, Saturday afternoons I'd have spent there after that. Every time we went shopping, I was over there staring at Mrs. Lawson. And she was just the kindest lady. I mean, man, I don't know how she looked after all us twerps. There had to been 50 of us little boogers running around in there, But she did. No, she was a great lady. No, yeah, it's not a bad story. Everything that's going on this day and age, I don't get it all. A lot of it, I guess, refuse to comment on it because some of my comments might not be so nice. I think we're making, in some cases, mountains out of molehills, and that always bothers me, no matter what we're doing when we try to create a mountain out of a molehill. So that's my feelings on that.
What year did you get into the furniture clinic? 45 years, so that would put you 1975?
We started that in 1973, I believe it was.
So that's got to be darn close to when you come back from traveling.
I think about 2 years later, yes, because after I came back from traveling, as a matter of fact, just to make this story a little bit how it falls into place, I said I went to work with Husky for about 2.5 years, just out of high school there, shortly after my construction job. Truth be known, Husky ran my ass off down the road after that point in time. and that's, I guess, was part of the reason for going traveling. So after I traveled and I got a little bit
old. What did you do in order for Husky to run you off?
Well, being tardy numerous times was the biggest. Yeah,
young guys are never tardy. Come on.
Okay, I was just playing out and out late lots.
I laugh about it because back then, even the same thing you say, for a young guy to be working in the oil patch, it was making a really good wage. Well, heck, you can say that for the last 20 years. If you started in the oil patch, you made really good money.
Absolutely.
And young guys who get lots of money like to, well, It doesn't. It burns a hole in your pocket. So you find ways to spend it.
The Villa nightclub. So.
What was the Villa nightclub like?
Oh, she was a shaken place. I tell you what. That thing would be filled to the rafters pretty near every night, Monday to Saturday.
Live band or?
I think continuous, or all the time. I don't think they had days off from a live band. I think there was live band daily. No, it was a place to go. It was romping, and that was right during my heyday when pocket full of money and away we go, and yeah, so it was a good place to go. It was fun.
So then you decide to open up a business?
What
point does that?
Actually, my friend Wayne King here, he's just recently sold off his holdings with Grithog Industries. Had gone to upholstery school in Weyburn at that time. They had an upholstery school. And while he was taking that, a fella from Prince Albert had a furniture repair store up there. And he called himself the furniture doctor. And I guess he was looking to get into upholstery, but didn't know any upholstery, so he was recruiting the school for any up-and-coming upholsterers. Offered Wayne a job when he was done his course up at Prince Albert, so Wayne moved up there and started upholstering with this fella. While he's upholstering, he's watching and learning a little bit of what this fella does with antique restoration and a lot of new furniture repairs, shipping damages, that kind of thing. So he went to work there for, I don't know now, might have been a year or two, possibly even, probably a year. And kind of wanted to get back to his roots here in Lloydminster, where his parents and his wife's parents and everybody friends were. So he was planning on moving back, and had asked me at that time if I'd be interested in going into business with him. Well, I was still working at Husky, and like I said, when I got back from my trip, like I say, Husky ran me off the first time. I went back to him the second time as, hey, I was a young punk, didn't deserve what I had. Sorry I screwed up. I'm getting married here shortly. I'd like to think I've matured and my head's in a little different place than it was, and I would certainly appreciate if you'd entertain the idea of hiring me back again. Well, it turned out that it was summertime and, of course, holidays, and as it turned out, at least I think this is kind of what happened, a lot of the operators were going on holidays at that time, and they needed a relief man that could fill in, and I already being green, so to speak, again, I knew a lot of these batteries and satellites and things like that and how to operate them. So I was kind of an easy fit for them, 2 weeks here, 3 weeks here, 2 weeks there, and I did that for all summer. And so whether that was a reason or whether the guy really believed in me or whether I really bullshitted him that good that he decided to give me another try. But anyhow, I did go back to work for Husky at that point in time, and was, again, doing I enjoyed the job. They put me on the gas system. I was kind of my own boss out there, so to speak. I just report in once in a while to the foreman, travel and checking the gas wells. It was a great job, one of the best jobs I've had. And so then after that, like I said, Wayne kind of offered up some partnership, or would you like this? So I hung around and worked with them for a while there at the shop and helped them out a bit, and then kind of handed in with my notice and joined on with Wayne. And then probably about 2 years later, Wayne sold out his interest to my younger brother, Rob, who remained my partner for the rest of the duration. So yeah, we started out in back of right about where Arby's is. There was a little shop back there where we first started. Not many people will probably remember, but we had a great big Canada flag painted on the side of our building that must have been 20 feet high and 40 feet long, just for identification kind of thing. But so that's where we started, and then made down to our digs downtown to now done.
Over 45 years. That's a lot of years to be in business. I assume some very high highs, some very low lows, and a lot of in between. What, when looking back over your 45 years of running a business, what's maybe some of the things that stick out?
Well, highs are they're almost tough. Well, yeah, highs, I mean, obviously, are the people. I was so fortunate to have run into so many good people over my lifetime. It's just crazy. You know, another thing, and I can't ever say enough for, is that 4-H movement. That 4-H movement, as a kid, taught me more for my adult life than I ever knew was happening at the time. I get a little jerked up talking about the 4-H, but it's an excellent program for everybody. And I don't care if you're taking photography or if you're in a beef 4-H club, as I was. Just the training and the experience will do you a lifetime of good. So when we started that business, I kind of had that part going for me, I guess. And I'd worked with Gene Sines through my high school, and Gene gave me all kinds of responsibility at age 16 and 17. I was manufacturing electric, the plastic signs, not the neon ones, but the electric fluorescent signs. I was manufacturing those at age 16 and 17. When Golf switched to Petrocan, or was it Esso switched to Golf? Esso switched to Golf. He had the contract on a good chunk of this North Country and all the way down to Provost to change out all the Golf signs, or all the Esso signs to Golf signs to Esso. And two of us, me and my buddy, 16 years old, out on the road, he'd just send the signs ahead and gave us that responsibility to go out there and change those signs. So I was fortunate in a lot of ways that way, that, you know, whether I had the capabilities or people believed that I did, they kind of let me run with some of this stuff a lot more than kids would get an opportunity for today. Let's put it that way. So that was also a good learning experience. So then when we got into business, you know, with Wayne, we kind of started up and, and then, like I said, about 2 or 2.5 years later, Wayne sold his interest to my brother, and then we carried on. So from Arby's location there to the old bowling alley downtown, which is what now a lawyer's office. It's on 49th, to building across the street where we are presently. That was kind of our transition for from start to finish.
You have me curious now, because you got emotional about 4-H. What was it about 4-H that is tough to talk about?
It's not tough to talk about. I'm just an emotional person. There's
nothing wrong with that.
I get very emotional, and and sometimes very easily.
My father's an emotional guy. It actually runs in we joke, the Chambers side of the family, because my grandmother was an emotional person, and my father's an emotional person, and I'm an emotional person. So it obviously strikes a chord with you. And if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine.
I don't have any problem talking about it. Just
was it a fond part?
I guess it's best time of my life. It's probably God, get my head straightened out here. Probably taught me more than anything taught me in my life. Besides maybe my old dad. It was a great experience. It's a great, like I said, I wish every kid in this world could do that 4-H movement. It would do them all a world of good. No, it's great stuff. It can't say enough good about the 4-H movement. it got me going. And I, in fact, I was a big farm kid. You're supposed to be 12 years old when you started, and I was only 10, but they were short a couple members, so somebody pulled some strings or something. And anyhow, I kind of got started a couple years older, or sooner than most of them did. But it was so good to me in what it taught me. It also sent me to a lot of 4-H camps. I was to 3 or 4 camps in Alberta, Goldeye Lake and Olds and things like that. Junior leadership. They taught you junior leadership at some of these things. I was also to a thing in Ottawa where there was 10 from each province and 7 out of the states, and they'd have all these different, a lot of it was fun stuff, but a lot of it was work stuff too that you kind of really didn't realize that you were working at the time, but something was still getting drilled in there, and that's the kind of stuff that's rewarded me my entire life. So I get emotional about that.
Let's go back to your business. I think 45 years it's a lot of years to be in business. Do you look back and was there ever a time you thought, you know what, maybe we should just be done and I should go back to working in the oil patch?
Sean, I can tell you during, I guess, some of that mid-'80s in through there, I thought about that nearly daily. Why we didn't go belly up 2 or 3 times through there, I only have to thank probably Peter Gulak at the Border Credit Union.
You were the second person to bring his name up in here.
He seen us through. We were struggling. There was a lot of times in through there we were struggling. Didn't know how or if we were going to pay our bills at the end of the month. If we were going to afford to eat, if we were going to afford to pay the few employees we had. I remember going and seeing Peter and saying, "This is all I got. I've got nothing more to offer. I'm working 12, 14 hours a day, and I seem to be going backwards." Peter's advice to me was, keep doing what you're doing. It'll come around. And God, you're driving the emotions on me here today, Sean. Anyhow, Peter kept us alive at least twice, where I'm sure any lending institution would have shut us down and buried us. Without a doubt, with no question in my mind. He must have seen, he must have believed, he must have had some vision for us, perhaps, kept us afloat. Never forgave any loans, I might add, but he did keep us floating there for a good number of years, and eventually we did crawl out of it. We were able to build our own building downtown after renting for a good number of years, and eventually saw ourselves through to retirement age, I guess. 45 years kind of came and went in such a bloody hurry. You have no clue that it's happening to you, and then all of a sudden, like, blam, you just got hit with a truck. Wow, okay, 45 years. I remember when somebody that was 45 years old was pretty damn old, let alone having worked that long, So, but it was enjoyable. Like I say, people, the amount of people, we kind of got off the subject there a little, highlights. The people, the amount of good people we've met over the time has been unreal. And a highlight from business, you ask about highlight. One of the, I suppose, neatest things. Well, we did a couple of pretty big projects for a small turkey company. We did the original Husky tower there, was manufactured and sewed and installed all the drapes on 6 floors of that. I was pretty happy with that in the infancy of our company. Also did the Dome Petroleum building. I was pretty pleased with that. So we beat some bigger boys, and that was kind of nice. The thing I felt maybe the best about was getting Lloydminster's clock at the old post office operating again. That old clock I can remember that as well as a kid. Big old clock up there, and it donged, and you knew when the hours were, and etc. And then that clock sat there for about 25 years. At least 20, and I think it was closer to 25 years, and didn't operate. I kept asking, what's the problem? No motor. I said, man, oh woman, we put man on the moon 50 years ago, and we can't make one little clock from 1920 operate in our clock tower? There's something wrong here. Something wrong. So I got a hold when Jeff Mulligan was mayor, and it's Jeff. I said, you know what? I said, that clock up there, I says, when you and me finish this conversation, I said, if I were you, I said, I would go and see Bill Musgrave and see if he'd be okay if we put his logo up in those clock faces. He said, well, why? And I said, well, because then we'd look like a happy town. We'd have those smiley faces on 4 sides. Because I says, right now, you know what we'd look like? We'd look like a bunch of schmucks. I says, that clock is never right. Look at the clocks. Oh, I said, no, let me correct that. Sorry, Jeff, I am wrong. Twice a day, that clock is correct. Only twice a day. The rest of the time, we look like a bunch of dummies. Clock sitting there, I said, you might as well blank it out. I said, they're going to get it going. And so he more or less, well, you think you can get it going? I said, well, we work on clocks, but we work on mantle clocks and things like that. He says, well, he said, think get it going? I said, I offered that to Tom Lysick here about 2-3 years ago. He says, Tom, we'll fix that clock for you, no charge. The cost of the motor, whatever it takes, but no labor. So never heard anything back. Really? Yeah. So I just kind of left that alone, thinking that's good. Lo and behold, I think it was next day or 2 days later, I get a call from Tom. Says, heard tell you might want to fix the clock. I said, I'm not sure, Tom. I made that offer to you a couple of years ago and sounded like you didn't want it. So I just kind of put it to bed. He said, well, it doesn't sound like you totally put it to bed. I said, I might still grumble about it once in a while. He says, yeah, to some of the right people by the sounds of it. So I said, well, I'd be pleased to take a look at it, but this was in January. I says, I know what that clock tower is like. It's full of pigeons, full of pigeon shit, and it's 40 below up there. And I'm not going up till it warms up in like springtime, and then definitely I will go up there and take a look. So we did go up there and see what the problem was. And yes, the motor was missing. They couldn't find a motor. Also off the motor, the first gear was missing. So nobody knew what size it was or how many teeth. So there's many configurations of gears that run up the tower of this clock, as it turns out. So we got my brother, who tinkered more at the clocks than I did back at the furniture clinic. We decided we can fix this thing. So now we have an upholsterer and a wood butcher trying to fix the town clock. That's quite the thing in itself. So we, first of all, we got to find out what kind of motor and what kind of gear we need. So I was getting up at about 3-4 o'clock in the morning and phoning England to try to catch those guys before the end of their day, to try to talk to the guys who manufactured that clock originally. So I got a little bit of information from them, but they were more apt at wanting me to cut this old one off and put a new head on there, an electric one. No, this clock should last for 200 or 300 years with no trouble at all if it's got its yearly maintenance, which consists of basically nothing. That clock won't wear out. So he said, well, yeah. So he needs a motor. So we start with this. Okay, well, we got to know how many teeth and what the gears and blah, blah, blah. So we start counting teeth on all these gears. Well, after a while, you get going and you lose yourselves. Then we resorted to a paint on the end of a stick. Count. There's, I think there must have been 25 of these we counted up. Somehow, between Rob and myself, through a backwards fashion as we did, we had it figured out that this motor needed to turn 4.5 times a minute and needed, and I can't remember now, 28 teeth on this gear that was this big. As it turned out, when we finally did find somebody a few months later in the States that knew how to calculate this, I guess when we were ordering the motor, lo and behold, of somehow figuring from the top end back down to the bottom end, we did have it figured out the right amount of turns on that motor and the right size of gear. So whether it was, God looks after fools and children or what, but somehow we fluked in and we got the right amount. So we did order the motor, ordered the gear, and serviced the thing. Cleaned out. I spent an entire probably a day or 2 days and had one big garbage can full of debris, meaning pigeon skeletons and droppings and feathers and crap out of the top end of that thing. So first job was to clean it up and secure it, get some windows back into place so the pigeons weren't using it for a home as they had been for a good number of years apparently, and got that going. So that I had a good feeling about when I was done. It was the mayor kind of rededicated it again after being off for that long. And the only improvement I'd like to see at this point in time, because when that clock was first put in, the town was probably about 2,000 people. I would suggest it probably didn't go more than probably 2 or 3 blocks each direction from that post office. And there certainly wasn't all these semis and everything else and all this traffic going up and down the road. So it was quite quiet. And you asked when we moved here, well, yeah, we had a population, I think, of about 4,500 at that time. That was in 55. So obviously everything was quieter back then. I would like to see a microphone or something hooked up, and it wouldn't take much to that bell so that we can, in fact, hear the bell when it tolls. As a matter of fact, I might have to go to the mayor and offer the donation of the amplifier or something to kick this thing along. So that was my, and I know it's got really nothing to do with my work, but I was pretty pleased with getting that going again, considering it was starting to look like it was never going to get going again. Because different people had tried, and I'd seen pictures where they had, and it looked like these little motors they got off at timers, and they were trying all the wrong things right, kind of thing. They just didn't follow it through far enough.
I asked you about your business and what one of the highlights was, and you told that story. I think it fits in perfectly to what you're talking about. You solved the problem nobody else could solve, it seems, in the town of Lloydminster, and it means a lot to you.
Well, I don't know if nobody else could solve it. Nobody else did.
Nobody else
wanted to.
Yeah.
Maybe that was it. But that to me, it was, well, like, I'd have been happier. Well, I wouldn't have been happier with smiley faces in there and seeing a clock work, but I'd been happier with smiley faces than a clock not working. That's just crazy. Blank it out, do something with it. But to have it's like, wait, can you imagine wearing a watch that doesn't run? What's the point? So this is kind of the same thing. So yeah, that was my one little Yahoo moment, I guess.
I know you like the parade. If there's one thing there's been 2 things I've heard about you. 2 things being the parade and being around it for, I assume, year upon year, and fireworks. I've heard those 2 things. Now, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right.
Well, I don't know, somebody must have guided you. Parades, Sean, again, small little Ukrainian boy from north of Two Hills, never seen a parade till I got to Lloydminster, and I don't know if they've had one every year since '55 or not. As far as I'm aware, they have. Now, if they didn't have it for a first number of years, I'm not aware of that. All I know is that ever since there has been a parade in Lloydminster, or at least since I've been here, and there's been a parade in Lloydminster, I have attended every one. Probably nothing to brag about either, but I can remember working for Husky Oil, and my first time before they ran my ass down the road, and it was parade day, and I was talking to my foreman, suggesting that I would maybe be going to town to watch a parade, and he suggested that I probably had a job that needed doing. And I'd kind of suggested that probably there's a damn good chance I'm going to jump in my truck and I'm going, and I'm not coming back after the parade, because I'm going to see the parade. Simple as that. I haven't missed one yet, and I'm not going to miss one. So he ended up sending me into Bill's stationery, actually, to pick up I think a notepad and a couple of pens. So I had a legitimate reason to come to town. But I think I probably would have quit my job over that. That's how, what it means to me, and how I guess bullheaded I can be on certain things. The parade to me, you just look up and down the routes. Have you ever seen more happy people? I mean, it's like going to Disneyland. You watch the crowds there, nothing but smiles. Eh? So this is the same thing. Yeah, I was with the parade. Well, and then so like I said, a kid, even that when we were in Australia and whatnot, I managed to get home just in time for the parade, I think 2 days before. So I thought I was going to miss that one, but I didn't anyhow. And then I was on the parade committee actually for probably far too long, many years, helping coordinate that. And judge. My main job on the parade committee was coordinating the judging of the floats. So that's a fairly monumental task in itself. You've got 5 different categories to pick a first, second, and third out of, and this all has to be done within like about a half or 3/4 of an hour from the time they kind of start accumulating in one area till they start marching down the road. So that was kind of a little task that was given to me that I did up till just about 2 years ago. I finally got too old, I discovered, to run. They were doing their staging area right on about, 46th and 52 Avenue on that cross section there. And then I would take the results and run them down to CKSA so they'd be there for when the floats came through. But I got to the point where I thought I was going to expire on the way with this running down there and not make her beyond Macaw's. And even though it was just across the street from CKSA, I didn't think I was going to make it anymore. So I bought myself a little motorbike for parade-specific use. And it's just the smallest little trail bike. So that's how I used to get around after and kind of, keep the parade, try to keep the holes tightened up and things like that. So, yeah, I bought that specifically for that, so that Macaw didn't have a service in the middle of a parade,
What was the best float you ever seen then? And I know that's probably a hard question, but
oh geez, there was a few. Unfortunately, I must say, all the best ones that come to my mind were out-of-towners, and they were professional type floats at some of the bigger cities like Edmonton. I think used to bring one around, but they were your class act type floats. I mean, long, huge, floral leaf. There was nothing chintzy about them. There was one about a cowboy riding a giant mosquito, and I can't even remember what it was about. It was always a bit of an eye catcher. There was quite a few. Like I say, I just have a hard time placing any as such. And I guess, besides the look, I was the coordinator guy, so I had my little group of judges. I decided that's the way to do it, to get myself 5 group of judges, and then they go out and judge, report back to me. I grab all this info and then go to CKSA with it. So that actually worked out really good. And I fell upon that after the first year when I was asked to help with that. And I thought I was just showing up to help. It sounded like I was when I got there, and I'm waiting and I'm looking around for the guy who asked me, and he ain't around. And I'm like, what's going on here? So the parade was already starting to march down the street as I'm getting all these lists together, discovering, hey, like, you're the only guy here. And one person can't do all this. So the next year I got in this 5 groups of 2 people. You do this section, you do this section. You know, you do the theme, you do the horses, you do the best commercial. And that worked out great. And in fact, they're still using that model to this day.
What was it about a parade? You said happy people? Is that what sucked you in?
It's life. It's happy people. It's kids. It's clowns. Our parades have really gone to hell over the years, though, let's face it. I mean, you know, they're getting worse and worse. And one thing I was glad to see them eliminate a good number of years ago, it really got to be kind of like Machinery Row. You know, you'd get a half a mile of these combines that can't even fit down the streets and tractors of the same sort. Well, you know, that's not really a parade to me. Parade is people, it's floats, it's clowns, it's horses, it's all of that. It's exhibition. It's the announcement for the exhibition. And as a kid, man, you waited all year long for probably Christmas and exhibition. You know, that was the 2 big highlights of the year. Remember collecting bottles all year long. We'd come in early that morning from the farm and sell the bottles at Wallen's Bottle Depot. And that's the money you'd go to the exhibition with in the afternoon, you know. So, yeah, I guess the parade being the big pre-exhibition, that's where the big draw is.
Now when you say it like that, I remember as a kid, Mom would always put us in the parade. They always had kids on bikes. I remember we'd dazzle up our bike, and I'm pretty sure I wrecked that part because I'm pretty sure I absolutely crashed in the middle of the parade. I was so young and nervous. That's quite a stage.
Was that here in town?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Sellers Dairy Freeze.
Yeah. Well,
there was, I'm sure, 100 to 150 kids at one time dressing those things up. And there were some great ones.
Well, and you mentioned kicking off the fair and everything. Like, you're right. That as a kid, now thinking back on it, you really look forward to the Lloyd Fair coming in, and that was like a big event and something we didn't have around until the following year. And it was only here for a few days, and then she was gone and on its way again.
Absolutely. No, it was always fun times.
So why do you think then that's changed?
I guess we've got desensitized to a lot of things. I mean, you know, everything's out there. It's either on TV or you go by it, or I think a lot of it's maybe cost. Because getting to do up a proper float with all the festoon and the floral sheeting and all the fringes and stuff like that isn't cheap. So as you see, most of our floats are looking pretty chintzy on the decoration. Or you know, vehicles or things like that coming through with 2 flowers on a hubcap is hardly my idea of decorating, you know. If it's a 1923 Packard or something, fine, you know. But it just, I think it's cost. Because I think you find people put the time into it. I'd certainly put the time into it, but I haven't asked, but to throw a number out there, I wouldn't doubt you'd spend $1,000 on decorations in a second. So that's probably a lot of it. But no better, I mean, form of advertising. How many people are going to see you within an hour? Good grief. You know, they line those streets and they're 3 deep and as thick as you can put them in there for 1.5 miles on both sides of the streets. Not many more people are going to see you. I
remember
got a captive audience.
I remember as a kid, though, you used to love going because you get so much candy, like so much candy.
Yeah.
And the rules got a little tighter on that.
Well, it did, because there was a bit of candy, and then it got to the point of overkill almost, where they were just.
I don't think you can
can't do
no
candy.
Kid could ever say that it was overkill.
No, I hear you. But they were pitching out like just mittfuls, and Well, then what? Because I sat in that committee, and I know what our problems were. Kids running out and fear of somebody getting run over. And in fact, somebody did get run over last year. Where was it? Not here. Vermilion, Wainwright, maybe it was at Wainwright. Somewhere fairly local, kid got run over with a float. So that's then when the parade committee decided, hey, we need walkers. If you guys are going to give away treats, that's fine and dandy, and it's all good. But you're going to have to utilize walkers to do that. You guys are going to have to get your candy, your goodies from your float, take it to the curb.
No more mittfuls.
No, well, yeah, they still kind of do. No, smaller mittfuls for sure, but they kind of walk along just the curb and do it. So now the kids aren't running the street because at times it got quite bad, and parents, I don't know, some of them are trying to get rid of those kids or what. I don't, like, I think I'd have a tendency to look after mine a little better and let them run out there amongst the horses and the, tractors and things like that over a 1 cent Jolly rocker, it just, and then it gets almost to overkill. You see people showing up with their shopping bag and, trying to fill the thing up. Well, it's for a few treats, it's not your next year's worth of supply of candy here, But people being people.
People love free things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. How about fireworks? What
fireworks? That was actually, I imagine you could consider a passion, perhaps.
Okay.
I did enjoy that a lot. The kind of got into it a little bit by accident with family fireworks. Way back when, that even family fireworks were very difficult to find, and if you found them, everybody thought they were illegal, you kind of sneaking around. Well, as it turned out, they really weren't illegal, just everybody thought they were, and basically nobody sold them. So we used to have a horseshoe tournament up at Bright Sands, bunch of us locals, and just party time on the May long weekend, basically, and draw up teams. And so it would always have some fireworks at the end. Well, then it got to the point, well, who's going to light these things? Well, geez, you needed a fire chief or somebody to, somebody with a license. Well, nobody wants to come out there amongst a bunch of drunken teenagers and do a bunch of fireworks, especially a responsible adult, So a couple guys then discovered that you didn't need a license actually for these family fireworks. And I think, in fact, they discovered that when they went and took the fireworks course for the bigger stuff. And then I kind of hung with them for a show or two and went and took my license. And they just kind of did a couple, with the Lloyd X. And I kind of, I guess because I did like it, decided to get into it in a little bit more of a commercial venture, I guess. Yeah. So kind of got started a little bit and built up a bunch of equipment and got, ordered myself up an electronic firing board and stuff from the States and shooting strips and things like that. And then, so we started to, I think time I was done, well, about 6 years ago yet, I know we'd destroyed over $1 million in the sky. So we'd seen quite a few sparkles. So to having shot $1 million or over $1 million worth, I kind of, for small town Lloydminster and small town Larry, I was kind of proud of that accomplishment. But I appreciate some of those bigger shows that, some of those have $100,000 budget. Well, if you just did 10 of those, you got $1 million worth. Well, it took me about 30 years to hit that $1 million mark. But and the beauty of that whole thing was, I destroyed $1 billion. Didn't cost me a penny. Somebody else paid for every penny of it. Isn't that neat?
Absolutely. So was it all in Lloyd here, or was it all over the place?
Oh no, we've been as far north as, I guess, Cold Lake, south to Provost, east to North Battleford, west to Spruce Grove. So kind of
And what was it about blowing? Is it just blowing shit up? Is that what it was cool about it?
Well, you got to like the boom, but have you never watched fireworks?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I rest my case. It's the sparkle. It's magic in the sky. You know, it is. It truly is magic in the sky. How can you take this gunpowder that goes boom and make it do this? And then with the next one, you make it do this. You know, it just, it's magic in the sky. It really is.
So was there a firework that came in and you're like, oh, man, this is going to be, I can't even wait. We're closing the shop up today. We're driving out, and we're going to let this thing off.
Wait for dark. Well, we had a couple big ones that we were that we had to have special permission to use, and that was the 10 and 12 inch, because you're only good for 6 inch on most licenses, so you got to get special endorsement for a 10 and a 12. We did shoot those, and I remember, just basically to see how big they are, and I know that 10 inch probably went up pretty close. You can pretty much figure on about you'll get about 100 feet of elevation per inch diameter of shell. So a 6 inch will go up about 600 feet. And I know that 10, 12 inch are probably in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,200 feet, and then break about almost that same size. Not quite, about probably 3/4, because you're getting fairly close down to the ground too. So they're just huge. So I kind of with anticipation awaited the first one of that. And especially when it came in, and in the bottom of the box, here's this firework. It's, I don't know if you've seen them, but they're, goiter that's obviously 10 and 12 inches diameter. It's got a big plastic cup underneath that holds all this black powder. And one that size, probably 2 cupfuls. This cap is off the bottom, and there is these little black pellets and powder all over the inside of the box. Now what do you do? Well, can't shoot it, can't send it in the air. Well, let's take apart the other one and see how much of this there's really got in there. Yeah, I measured it up pretty well, 2 cupfuls. Okay, so then I started taking a bunch of this had fallen out. I had maybe 1 cupful, and I still needed to get another cupful of powder somehow. So I started taking apart a bunch of 6 inch shells and getting enough powder to make up this cupful, and taped it back together, and we sent it in the air, and everything worked. But then I had all these 6 inch shells to destroy somehow, so I put them inside a steel mortar and out in the country and fired them. And I still remember when the bang went and the smoke cleared, I couldn't find that mortar. It shot it straight, like I put it on the ground sideways. I didn't want to shoot it up into the air. Didn't know what was going to happen with it. That mortar, which probably weighed 30, 40 pounds, I bet you it must have skidded it backwards about 40 yards into the grass. The only reason I found is because it was smoking back there in the grass. Oh yeah, okay. So anyhow, that was the one anticipation. But other than that, I mean, you're always looking for new and exciting, wonderful things. The spinners, they call them tourbillons. They're always kind of neat. But a lot of it is too. It's you could give 10 guys that same box of fireworks, and I'm sure you'd see 10 different shows. It's all in the guy's interpretation. Some guys can't interpret them. It's like some guys can't saw a board, There's one fella I work with, his idea of shooting is you light fuses. Bop, 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 bop. There. Well, no. You put together sequences. You put together different things to make effects out of them. Them by themselves are just, they're another large sparkler. But it's what you do with your large sparklers that makes a difference. I've always felt anyhow. And I did. I said I had training from this Bernard, who owns BM Fireworks, big company in Eastern Canada. And then I worked on a few displays in Calgary at the Global Fest with Big Bang Fireworks. And so, those, you kind of get spoiled there because you see these grandiose ideas, and then you try to pull it down into your small town budgets, But a lot of the ideas, you'll do it just maybe in not as of a grandiose way, but you can still get the effect. And some you just can't.
Are you doing any more fireworks now, or you're done?
I'm almost retired with everything but life. I'm hoping to really kick that one into some longevity.
What do you thought of retirement?
You know, it beats the hell out of working. No, honestly, Sean, I thought I was going to struggle. People deprivation, I always thought was going to be my big thing, because you maybe haven't noticed, but my wife claims I do like to talk. So I'm not sure where the hell she gets that from, but
well, if you didn't talk, this wouldn't go so well. We never have brought up. We haven't talked about your personal life very much. How many years have you been with your wife?
This is my second attempt, and we've been 99. So what are we? 21 years here. Yeah, and we have a blended family. She's got 2 children. I've got 2. Well, grown children, obviously, but no. Sucks when your kids are middle-aged, but that's a reality. So, we got, how many grunions we got there? I think it's about a Greyhound bus full. It feels like at Christmas and Easter, anyhow. 9 of them, yeah. So we're doing our job for keeping the world populated.
Is there lessons, I always ask people about their relationships, their marriages, being on your second. Is there things you learned from your first, or things you've learned in your lifetime about a marriage that, you've learned now since the beginning?
Well, you'd have to be one awful dumb bugger if you didn't learn nothing from the first one or the second one.
I would 100% agree.
So, obviously, a couple of things. The guy was a lot younger then. Probably a lot, well, no question about a lot stupider, too. Or I would like to think I was stupider then than I am now. So, things like that. But, yeah, I think a lot of it was age and maturity, perhaps, and maybe. But, the whole world, it just made wrong. You go through school and they teach you all the arithmetic and all the history and all that. Did they teach you anything about marriage and child rearing and finances? Zero. Probably the 3 most important things in your world, and they teach you nothing about it when you leave school. You come out of school, well, okay, you're starting to work, now you got some money. Well, geez, you open a bank account. Well, what do I do? Nobody's taught you anything about that. Kids, has anybody taught you? Well, I don't even know how you teach anybody how to raise a kid, first of all. But marriage, too, it's okay, there you go. And you just go at it dumb. Try to figure it out. Like there's no education on any part of that. And I always said that's so wrong. So it's little wonder we bugger up as often and as much as we do, perhaps. I got to admire the people that have done their 40, 50, 60 years. Good grief. How did you not kill him by now? There had to have been arsenic in the medicine cabinet there at one time, all the power to him, like hats off. But yes, guy obviously learned from the first time. Maybe it also had a little bit to do when I got back from Australia. Maybe I was a bit on the lonely side. Felt like I needed somebody or something. I don't know. Maybe didn't make as well. I know definitely I didn't make as good a choice as I made my second time, and my second one. If that would have happened the first time, there wouldn't have been a second one. So, but in the meantime, I've kind of got my head out of my behind here, and kind of matured up a little, and and the other thing too. We were to the age too where we weren't raising children anymore too, and that takes its stress and its strain on a lot of times on people and relationships as well.
Kids aren't time-consuming whatsoever.
No, and they're not hard on the nerves or nothing.
You mentioned school's not teaching about finance, marriage, kids. You ever wonder why they don't do that? Wouldn't that just make complete sense?
Well, to me, it's always made sense since I was probably in junior high. You know, even as a youngster, it was kind of like they teach us nothing about that. A little, well, in my second year in 12, when I picked up another subject so I could play football, I picked up economics because I was told it was an easy subject. They taught us a little bit there, but it was so minute, it's not even worth mentioning. And it just started that one year. I imagine they probably still got it, but yeah, it's.
Well, I sit here and people hear it on the podcast all the time, but I got 3 kids, 4 and under, and I worry about a couple of things, and one of them I always say to Mel, my wife, is, man, how did I get it right on the first time with you talk if you would have met your second wife when you met the first. Maybe none of it ever changes, and there you are. Well, I did that in my first, and I sometimes wonder how on earth that is possible. And we're not nearly as far along as you guys are, but I mean, that's a big choice. And there's not like I don't know, there isn't no such thing as a school of marriage or a school of, in the Catholic church system, they put you through a course. You have to go through a course to get married Catholic. And I laughed at it because I was like, man, if you haven't thought of these questions and you're coming here to get married, you probably got more problems, right? Like talking about religion and kids and a couple different things. And it's like, I'm hoping you're talking about this before you decide you're getting married. Finances is another one, right? Like people put themselves in very tough positions. But schooling, we never talk about it. We never talk about a ton of things there.
And you hit it right on the head there, that people put themselves in some very awkward positions when it comes to financing. Most of it is self-caused. I've known people who just, like, you're a stupid in the head spender. Like, you just stop and pen and paper in 2 minutes, you'll soon figure that what you're doing isn't right, But that's people.
Well, this time we're living through right now, I mean, government giving out money, and I don't know. I don't know what to think of this. But
I don't either, Sean. And that's, a lot of people. I mean, now I'm starting to think a lot of these people just, $2,000. Hey, I can live not bad on that. I don't think I want to go to work.
Oh, I guarantee there's a ton of people like that. But what happens when those get cut out?
Yeah, but the thing is, these meatheads don't realize, too, is they've got to come up with the taxes of this come April. And you can bet you a nickel to donuts that be lucky if 1% is hung on to anything for taxes. And they're going to come April, geez, I got taxes to pay on this $12,000 I got here, Yeah, you dummy. No, I don't know. This is a really trying time. But, geez, I'll tell you what, at my age 70 here, I'd have never, ever imagined in my entire lifetime, in 10 lifetimes, that something like this could come down. If somebody 6 months ago would have said, Sean, you know what? On about March 15th, we're going to shut down Vermilion. Totally shut it down. We're going to keep people in their houses, going to lock the stores, and shut down. You'd look at them like, what, are you crazy? Like, that's impossible. There's no bloody way
you might as well
that
get
you
a tin hat on.
Yeah, there's no way you can shut down an entire town. Well, hell, we shut down a town, a province, a country, the world. How, like that, who... I just get lost for words when I get thinking about that. You'd think it's an impossibility, and yet it's happened, and maybe going to continue happening. My stepson said to me the other day, said something about, his mother, she's not traveling down to Costa Rica till we've got a place down there, but she's not traveling down there till they've got a vaccine in place and it's proven and whatnot. And he kind of looked and he says, he says, the cold's a virus, isn't it? Yeah. He says, have they found a vaccine for that in the last couple 100 years? Good point. Maybe they may never find a vaccine for this. Wouldn't that be something? Humanity for the rest of time will have this God. That'll be the new picture of what man looks like, But how the heck, it's...
I struggle with how we get past this.
Well, I do too. It's
Like, is it in a year?
And I don't think you can just go ahead and ignore it. You know, the part that's scary is the rapidity of how it spreads. You know, it's not that it's spreading, it's how quick, like you can put one person in a room of 500 and they've pretty much all got it by the afternoon out, you know. I don't know how we get around it. And Jesus, I'm almost at the end of my tenure. I keep thinking of all the young ones coming up. I've lived a great life. Man, a woman, you know, like right from we came through the 50s and all that. Sure, there wasn't land of milk and honey and the horn of plenty. But you know what? We were all the same. People I went to school with, I don't know if there was 2 rich kids in the entire school. We were all average. And everybody got along well. Like I said, I've had a great life. I've never had abundances. I've never really done without, and I'm mucho contento, as they'd say in Spanish.
Well, a couple more before I let you go. Maybe what do you think the biggest achievement is over your lifetime? Is there something that just there's the crown jewel? Is it furniture clinic? Is it something you accomplished? Is it the clock? Is it?
Yeah, well, furniture clinic, that was a lot of my heart and soul. Me and my brother Rob. I'd hate to think that was my crowning glory. I mean, if I'd have built the Empire State Building or something, I'd have maybe been proud of that. But, no, I mean, I'm proud of the fact that we did own a business. I was able to provide a living for quite a few families over that 45 years, including my own family. But a lot of the employees raise families while working there. That makes me feel good. I guess really anyone's crowning glory would have to be the next generation. The raising of your kids. I had one in particular that if I could have caught mad, if I was quicker on my legs mad than he was on his legs scared, I might have killed him. His only salvation was he could run faster than I could. So I had one that was challenging, and you know what? Took a while, but has turned into a respectable, good adult that I'm proud of. So, and the other one never really was any grief. But then I kind of think back in my own upbringing, and I think maybe my parents had one that might have given them a little grief too, and the other 2 weren't too bad. And we won't mention who he was. So maybe some of that. A friend of mine always does say that an apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So there may be something to that. But I guess, like I say, the crowning glory would be, I guess, to bring up some healthy children with a set of brains in their head that will go out in the world and, in fact, use them. You can't want more than that out of life.
I laugh about your comment about the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My oldest son is Sean 2.0, and I am in for a hold on, boys. It's going to be a fun ride, but he talks a mile a minute. I don't like to talk at all, and he is a handful. And I've heard from friends of my parents that it's me running around, right? And so when I hear you talk that you had a son after you just told me the story of being on a trip across the world and almost not making it home, and Husky getting booted out of there and everything else, and I could see it.
Yeah, well, I guess I had fun. You know, and I came out of it fairly unscathed is the beauty of it. I often tell people, geez, I'd love to just do that one more time. And of course they always throw it, and know what you know now. No, I don't want to know any more than I knew the first time. I'd go through it stupid one more time. I kind of came out of it fairly unscathed. I still have all my hands, all my legs. I'd do it stupid one more time.
If you could take a time machine then and go back to your 20-year-old self, 25-year-old self, right at the start of your business, you wouldn't be like, listen, just remember this lesson.
Nah.
No?
No. Just put me back there. Just an empty head and put me back there and I'll figure it out. Yeah. I mean, you'd have a hell of an advantage if you knew what you knew now, but that's unfair. I mean, I'd go at her dumb one more time. Yeah.
One more for you then. In business in general, if there's somebody who's going to start their own furniture clinic, is there a piece of advice you'd give them, and now that you've gone through it all?
Buy lotto tickets. No, I'm just kidding. I think so. I mean, get used to some fairly long hours, quite a bit of hard work. And I guess some, if you get large enough, maybe get quite lucrative. Our situation, I mean, we never got filthy rich out of it. We did make a living, decent living. Like I said, we employed families who ate and had somewhere to sleep as partial our doings, I guess. But no, I don't know that I would. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a tough one.
Did you enjoy owning a business?
I enjoyed it. You know, I really enjoyed it from the aspect of you think you've got a little bit more freedoms. I can come and go when I want. Well, I don't know where in the heck a guy ever got that one put into his head, but I can tell you that's probably quite opposite of that. If you really have to get away, then you can. I'll put it that way. But chances are you're staying there more than the guy that's working there. Well, you are. You're there before, you're there after, and on Saturday and Sunday you're thinking about what you're doing on Monday. So from that aspect, but yes, I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed the people. Like, I'm a people person. I don't do well by myself. And I had a constant flow of people. That's where I thought retirement was really going to be difficult for me. But I'm surprised how easily I've fallen into it.
So what's your best what do you like most about retirement? What's your you got coffee row, or are you golfing, or are you traveling? What are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No, that's a bit of a lie. I've been busy my whole life. I can't do nothing. I've been doing a little bit of maintenance on our house and our yard this year. But I'll get into some volunteering. I mean, I do a bit of volunteering now, different things. So I'll do a bit of that. No, you got to keep these things busy, and you got to keep this thing busy, because otherwise macaw will get you quicker than you know. One foot ahead of the other. You got to keep moving, and you got to use that noggin. God put that there for a reason. Like my old dad said, it wasn't just to keep you from floating away. If that was all you wanted, he'd have put a rock up there instead. Could have used a smaller one. But yes, that's. I did enjoy the business. I did enjoy the people. I like the work I did. I still love touching up. I mean, hell, I'll take and you want me to make that knot disappear, I can make that knot disappear for you. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but we did a lot of repairs, moving repairs, shipping repairs, and the stuff got fixed up and went brand new out in the store floors for sale. They weren't a marked down item when we finished with them. They were sold off at full price. So I had a bit of a knack, and not bragging, but I had a bit of a knack for that, and I enjoyed it, I guess, because I had a bit of a knack for it. I could do a good blend on colors and do a lot of good disguises. And like one guy we had there for 6-7 years, I couldn't let him do a touch-up for the love of me. No matter what he tried, it'd always end up a black blob. I finally no, quit. No. I can't get you to do my touch-ups. He just didn't have an eye for color, you know. That's the way it is. So.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope you have too.
Yeah, well, it's been, geez, what a BS session this was. 10% of this might have been factual.
Well, you're locked in now, sir. Appreciate you sitting down with me.
Well, I appreciate being asked. I kind of honored, I must say. Humbled would be a better word, probably. I say when Lynn phoned me, she surprised me and humbled me, and I'm not sure what all in the same motion. But I said, what you need is somebody, a politician, that can really BS the troops. I don't know if she figured that was me or what the deal was. But anyhow.
Well, it's been an enjoyable almost couple hours here sitting. So.
Well, I got to thank you for taking the time to do all this, Sean. I mean, you know, it's like you and the rest of these archivists. If somebody doesn't do that, a lot of that stuff was going to end up in the dump, basically. I mean, if somebody didn't start cataloging or doing something. And I know what that's like. I've saved sports things and stuff for the last probably 50, 60 years at home. I got, you know, just kept shoving them in a book. I'll put them in there one day. Well, I got to start at that one of these days because it's going to end up in the dump too. And there's a lot of good old information in there. But this is kind of the same thing. If you and people like you don't put the work and effort in there, history gets erased. It's gone, and once it's gone forever.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I listened to you talk about, say, fireworks, and the time and effort you put into that hobby, and some people get it, some people don't get it. But sitting here doing this, I find highly enjoyable. Yeah. Very enjoyable. Time flies by, and especially when you're talking about shuffling some weed in your cowboy boots across the border. That's something you just don't hear every day.
Well, that's something maybe my grandkids don't need to know, but also part of my life. So
no, it's.
If I was Jesse James at one time, I guess I was Jesse James at one time.
No, I am thoroughly enjoy. I appreciate it. I hope people enjoy listening to it as much as I do. But I enjoy the stories. I enjoy hearing about our past and where we've come from and people's perspectives, because everybody has their own perspective. And you running a business in this city for 45 years and growing up in this area, for 70 years, I mean, there's something to be said about that. And you just, I put it at, you've lived double my time. So as much as I think I know, some days I know squat.
Well, you hope it all keeps adding up. You'd hate to think you get to the point where you stop learning, because then you are a dummy,
Well,
I think, I kind of go with the old theory that, listen to people, because it's the same old thing. Even the dumbest person on this earth has something to offer. I don't care how dumb he is. He's got something to offer. So listen to him. That's just life. Treat people like people.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, I certainly appreciate the time. I didn't realize that I'd rambled on for quite as long as I had.
It was perfect.
Hell, I was just getting started.
Hey, folks, thanks again for joining us today. If you just stumble on the show and like what you hear, please click subscribe. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, a new guest will be sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you find your podcast fix. Until next time.